the war does to society is explained there. So the environmental impact, impact for the human beings, impact for oxygen, lack of oxygen, for example, water, fresh air, and the animals, and all of these resources. So this is the result of war. So I thought it was meaningful to have that image, So actually, the purpose of the war in modern politics, as we want to make a new world. But this artist question: we are making a new world. Are we making a new world like this? Kind of questioning the instrumentality of war. And I think keeping that in mind is very important for the rest of the presentation. Let's see. Yeah. So I kind of wrote this thinking that because it's a module as a learning outcome, I thought that as students, that you will have some understanding, you will have some understanding of war, and especially broaden your understanding of war in relation to two crucial ideas. These two crucial ideas are, today's warfare and in relation to ethics and laws. Now, of course, ethics means usually it related with conduct, with human conduct. And ethics refers to right and wrong, good and bad, proper and improper, and good conduct versus bad conduct. That's what ethics is. The laws are basically accepted norms or conventions or customs in a society. So usually it's institutionalized. Once it's institutionalized, it's become laws. So that means that everybody in a society are expected to follow them. Yeah. So that's what laws are. So the ethics and laws. So these are kind of, you could call it, ethics is more informal. Laws are more formal. Ethics is more personal, individual. Okay, of course, it has social level, but more person to person, whereas the laws are imposed by the institutions. Yeah, so you can see those two. So our idea is to understand ethics and law in relation to warfare, and if you can broaden your understanding, I think it's the purpose of the lecture is achieved. And Frank, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
okay.
I'm very much hearing you, but I have muted myself so that I don't interfere with your lecture.
Okay. Wonderful.
And I just drove 2.5 hours from Bangkok to get here to IBOC.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you
for coming. Yeah.
Thank you. So ethics and laws, that's the purpose. And then I want to specifically focus on a special theory. I mean, this theory is not developed in one day. It's about more than 1,000 years history. And that theory is called just war. It's a theory used in the Western world. In what manner we can make war legal? How we can make warfare legal as a society, as a civilization, as a country. And that's what just war theory is. So these, starting from the 4th century Common Era, it has developed up until today. So today there are about 10 principles, and I'm going to tell you them a little bit later. So that's the kind of the purpose of this lecture, to introduce those specific theories. And now these theories related to both to ethics and the laws. They are kind of mixed. The ethics and laws are mixed in those theories. Yeah. Okay. And then I want to introduce international conventions, because these are very important. That is where I'm going to end my talk today in the lessons. So international conventions, that means like here, I'm referring to United Nations, International Committee of the Red Cross, Geneva Convention, and things like that. These are the international bodies, internationally accepted rules. So it's not like individual country, but internationally the community of nations have accepted. And then IHL is a specific rule, specific ethical rule, ethical law related to war. So IHL means International Humanitarian Law. So this refers to how warfare should be conducted ethically and legitimately. So we are talking about those things. So those are the ones that covered. And then, time permitting, if the questions come, we can talk about Buddhist pacifism, but we are not focusing specifically on Buddhism, but we will deal. There will be implications on Buddhism when we discuss this. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. So that's the kind of the purpose. And now, important book for you to note. And actually, you may want to take a photo if you want. There's an article here. This is the book. I think you can see it. This article here that, and this book has many chapters. Starting from Judaism, Catholic Christianity, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, Protestant Christianity, Sunni Islam, Shiite Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, and also Chinese and Japanese religions and Sikh tradition. And the chapter 8 I have written, and it's called The Buddhist Tradition in South and Southeast Asia. And now here, I will refer to later, there is a section on Thailand. A very interesting case, kind of in terms of ethics and law related to it, related to King Naresuan, and I will refer to it later. So you may want to keep note of this book. And now this book, edited by Greg and published by Cambridge University Press, I think it was published 2014. I think, yeah, 2014. And this is the most detailed and extensive study on the ethics and laws of war with original sources. As you can see, source book of textual tradition. So basic historical text about related to war, draw in from the Pali Canon and the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament and Quran and so on, various texts. So if you want to have the primary sources related to war, this is the where you wanted to go. And now image, you may want to notice this image. There are 6 people in this image, and you can see in the middle, there's a cross here, and it's written 1914 to 1918. So this the kind of refers to the World War I. And after the World War I, there's a monument that was produced. And you can see a lot of people. This is the on the very bottom on the right is you can see average innocent people. And then also you can see hats and so on. They are soldiers. Probably the middle one who is holding the cross is probably a Catholic chaplain, kind of the priest who serve in military and in army. So it's very it brings 3 parts. It brings 3 bodies into perspective here: the church, the religion, Christian, and then the soldiers. Most of the time they are Christians or Jewish soldiers, and then victims, the people like civil persons there. So those 3 groups are together, and so these are the 3 individuals. Of course, organized state is not mentioned, but these are the people that we will discuss in today's talk. Yeah, and now I wanted to contrast 2 things, and you may want to note this. And I see today, that's our world. Disregard whether we are Buddhist or not, or Christian or Muslims or not, this is our world, because we are one global community. So one eruption of one part of the world affect us, because we breathe the same air. That's a fact. And our ecological system is related. The water and nature, pollution, warfare, they all affect. So this is our world. And then I have put on the bottom our world versus yesterday. Here I'm referring to Buddhism. So from the time of the Buddha until yesterday. And it doesn't mean literally yesterday, but that means that when we talk about Buddhism, we talked about Buddhism of yesterday, not Buddhism of today. Yeah. So that's one I wanted to contrast. So we wanted to look at the Buddhism versus the today's world. And now here, this is our world. And of course, this is the British perspective, because you can see here 6 newspapers. I think all of them are British newspapers. And the British newspapers appeared like last month, for example. And these are how 6 newspapers reported the Hamas attack, the Palestinian Hamas attack of kibbutz in Israel. And you can see on the first one, you can see, 50 years, another Yom Kippur stuns Israel. You can see, the military tanks and people like said it, kind of repeat it. And then Independence report, Hamas takes 50 hostages. Actually, it has become about 239 hostages now. And then the Sunday Times refers to how the mothers flee with their children. And then Observer refers to similar scene. You can see Hamas flag, Palestine flag is above the tank there. And then Sunday Telegraph refers to, Hamas terrorists butcher civilians as stun Israel suffers the 9/11 moment. Now here basically kind of the newspaper reports the shock that Israel underwent. And now what is interesting is this word, Hamas terrorists butcher civilians. This is very important. Terrorism and its threat to civilian life. Yeah, this is not yet war, but this is the real scenario that we experience in terms of violence around the world. And then Sun Herald refers to, Israel declares war. This is the kind of response to the terrorism and hostage taking. And you can see the bullet, artillery is firing to Gaza. You can see the buildings here and parts there. So now we are, I think it's the 26th day, 26th or 25th day after this recent war. And now this war is not limited to Palestine or Israel. It affects all the countries around the world, and it has influenced the politics of the world after 1948, after the World War II, it's particularly after 1960s, up until today. So the September 11th and all of these are all related to this problem. Yeah, so it's not a kind of, we cannot just say, oh, it's them, their war, and we are not part of it. It's kind of lip service, and it doesn't work like that. But this is kind of where we are now. Here, few things I wanted to mention, and if it is our warfare, what are the issues? The issues are, first of all, it's about territory, land. Kind of somebody's land, another group has taken, or somebody's land, another one is occupied, or somebody's land, another person has conquered, or country has conquered. And so minorities feel that their territory is taken by the majority. For example, things like that, territorial disputes, invasions, like Saddam Hussein invaded in Kuwait, for example, and wars, Gulf War, Vietnam War, Ukraine and Russian war, and occupations. Israel is always accused of being occupying Palestine territories. These are the things. And then recently, important one. This one actually important for us, the third one in terms of ethics and law, hostage taking. That means you are taking, you are keep as prisoners, hostages, innocent people. And then the human shields, this is very important. This is what we consider today about ethics and laws. Like, say, for example, militants or terrorist groups using human beings like women, children, patients, and schools, and so on, as a cover up to hide their terrorism. So these are these two are very much important for our talk today, and in relation to humanitarian law. And then the fourth one is also important. Here there's a word attack on non-combatants. Here, non-combatants means people who have not taken arms, or, in other words, non-soldiers, people who are not fighting wars. For example, they're not all, but children, women, elderly, the sick, vulnerable, and so on. These are vulnerable groups. So this is against the international humanitarian law. That's the kind of the foundational thing. Children, women, sick people, and people who are not participating in war. And then the next one, very much important for the next session, that we talk about international humanitarian law, attacking civilian installation. Now here, civilian installation is like schools, hospitals, marketplaces, houses, community buildings, and like hospitals, and killing civilians. These are unacceptable as warfare tactics. They shouldn't be used. They are unethical. It's against the law. And these things, violation of these things in our relation to ethics in war, we call it war crimes. These are considered as war crimes. If you attack non-combatants, and if you civil installation, hospitals, and so on, if it can be proved, it's a war crime. And then here I refers to you one thing. States, the governments, always have to fight militants. That's a reality. Like, for example, Hamas is only an example. Here, but there are many other groups. So fighting militants is a real scenario in our world. And now, war today, or warfare, most of the warfare is usually professional armies are fighting a guerrilla warfare. So the guerrilla warfare basically is usually not professional armies, but group of people who take arms and form militant groups and wage war against the government, or issues like that. So most of the warfare is like that within countries. Like, think about, for example, Myanmar at the moment, for example. It's a good example. And think about southern Thailand, for example. These are good examples from Asian Buddhist societies: army versus guerrilla warfare. And then this is the most difficult one. Now, if you want, you can take a photograph of this slide. This may be useful for you. And here, non-conventional weapons are used. Earlier, probably in the olden days, arrow and bow, or gun, But now the weapons are quite complex. And now you can have remote wars. You can operate things from the US, for example. You can, remotely you can operate like drones and so on. So the warfare has become very complex. So now this is the world that we are living in. So in this complex world, we need ethics and laws to regulate it. That's what the talk is about. Now, this book, you may want to know, you see the image is very clear. It's a soldier's boot. Basically this book, as also Greg produced this book, and this one, it is this book. And here it was published by Blackwell in 2006. And these are very interesting if you are doing research about ethics of war. The original text in the Western tradition, kind of some of the things that we are talking about in the history of the development of 1,000 years, over 1,000 years of history of ethics war, you can find these books in original text, and very valuable document for you to consult. Yeah. So now, warfare has limits. And now earlier mentioned about warfare, now I wanted to see the warfares have limits, or should have limits. And now, what is happening today, this is a little bit different from Buddhism. Today's international policy doesn't prohibit war. What I try to say here, war is accepted. International politics, nation politics, war is accepted. That's why we have military, army, navy, and so on. We have so the war is accepted. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Not necessarily bad. It is bad, but not necessarily. So the war is accepted thing, and it's not prohibited. So most important thing is this: war's instrumental is recognized. So kind of remember earlier I say we are making a new world. That's the idea. Kind of here say that through war you can make a new world. You can bring peace. Kind of like that idea. War's instrumentality is recognized. And there's a very interesting saying. This is a quite old statement, and it says that I'm looking for the quote. If you want peace, prepare for war. This is actually, I saw it for the first time in Cardiff Castle, a museum, but it's an old saying in the Western view. So the peace and war, they are binaries. So basically, relative absence of war is peace, but relative absence of peace is war. So if you wish for peace, you have to ready for fight war. So that means war guarantees peace. So war has potential to create peace. There. So this is the kind of how Western just war theories or Western politics organized. You have to fight wars in order to make peace. War is essential for making peace. That kind of idea is ingrained in Western thinking. And so, further thing that you want to note, legitimacy of war and defensive war. That means to defend your country, the nation, or the world, or when you are threatened. Defensive war is legitimate and accepted. So I say that war is not prohibited, war is instrumental, war can make peace, and war is legitimate. So this is not Buddhism. I'm not talking here about Buddhism. Then, if it is the case, if it is legitimate, war needs laws. Wars need have laws. War has to be fought according to rules. There are, kind of, for example, if you perform badly in the war, Yeah, war crime tribunal. And also soldiers are court-martialed, for example. So there are code of ethics for soldiers. So wars have laws. It's internally as well as internationally. So this means battlefield requires ethics. It's not only human beings need a notion of good and bad, but soldiers and the people who involved in the war also needs ethics. Yeah, they have to do the right thing, proper thing, good thing. That's what this means. Not improper things, not negative things. Yeah, like for example, raping women. Yeah, it's a good example. Raping women in the war is unaccepted. Yeah, not acceptable. Like that's kind of become under using rape as a weapon of war. It's a war crime. Yeah, so that means battlefield requires ethics, and then that kind of laws is called international humanitarian law, or IHL. Yeah, this is the laws accepted around the world, and it comes from Geneva Convention from 1949. If you want, you can take this slide, but I will explain this a little bit later. So here, basically, in this slide, what I'm saying, war is not necessarily bad. It is recognized as instrumental in creating peace, and it has legitimacy when it follows laws. So when the warfare has ethics, warfare is accepted according to international law. Got it? So that's the key point that you want to remember in ethics and laws. Okay? So now, I wanted to, earlier I say that our world versus yesterday's Buddhism, and this is yesterday's Buddhism until, or maybe these kind of use a little bit exaggeration, but basically what I'm saying is we are talking about ancient history. So in Buddhism, in Buddhist doctrine, Buddhist teachings in the Pali Canon, there is no place for any war in Buddhist doctrine. So you see the absolute nonviolence. Yeah. However, in Buddhist societies, as you see Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Japan, China, all of these countries, one or another time, have embroiled in wars. So the war has been, Buddhist and Buddhist societies have confronted war. So, interesting thing is, this is where I say yesterday's Buddhism. There is no guideline in Buddhist doctrine for fighting a righteous or unrighteous war. So there's no specific regulations regulating righteous or unrighteous war, not specific ones. And most importantly, Buddha saw war during his lifetime, but he did not object to war. So this is very important for us to remember. Buddha witnessed war, but he did not object. So this idea of Buddhism as a pacifism, absolute pacifism, become questionable here. So war can be a part of governance, and the Buddha has nothing to do. The Buddha did not object it, but as a Buddha, as a religious teacher, this word you may know, futility. Futility means meaningless, lack of meaning, no sense, and worthless. So Buddha saw futility in war. Buddha shows that war is completely meaningless. And from Buddha's point of view, pain, dukkha, or suffering, and unsatisfactoriness can be found in all levels in war. So Buddha rejected pain. And for the Buddha, in the Buddha's view, a significant difference here, because the war involved taking life is a pain. So, and also Buddhism is not talking about minimizing pain, but absolute elimination of pain. So this is the kind of where Buddhism is different from others. Buddhism says that it doesn't matter who you kill, whether your enemy or your friend, it's basically killing. So it's pain. So Buddhism has a kind of little bit absolute way. It's not a minimizing pain, but what we want to do it absolutely, we want to get rid of pain. And this is also very important slide. And if you want to take a photo, you may want to keep it. So basically saying that Buddhism doesn't see instrumentality of war. And Buddhism doesn't see even whether the war can be fought ethically can be questionable. Yeah. So this is the point. So I contrasted our world with Buddhism because we wanted to have some Buddhism. So war's instrumentality is questionable in Buddhist doctrine and practice, and that's the kind of little bit conclusion that I want to draw in relation to war. And now I wanted to a little bit mention here that Buddhist societies, like for example Sri Lanka, had civil war since 1983 until 2009. And during that 26 years, many people died. And that time, people were questioning, how war could be in Buddhist society. Could Buddhists fight war? Is war justified within Buddhism? And so I got involved with United Kingdom Buddhist Association, and we held a conference in our university in 2002 called Bath Conference, Buddhism and Conflict in Sri Lanka. And then I published this book from Routledge in 2006. So this is somewhere if you want to see how Buddhist traditions is applied to Thailand and Myanmar also, how historically our tradition, Theravada, dealt with violence. You may want to look at this book, yeah? This is the 2006 publication by Routledge, yeah? And I edited the book. And then I go to the World War II, and Japan got into World War II with the attack of Pearl Harbor, and Shinto was very much part of the war. And you can see this book published in 1997, Brian Victoria. And let's see what I have. This is the book. Yeah, this is the book. And this book, Weatherhill published it. This book talks about neglected aspect that Buddhism, at least some Buddhists grew up involved in war. And if you see here on the top, you can see a staircase, very staircase. It looks like a ground of a Buddhist temple or Shinto shrine. And on the left, you can see a general. And then on the right, you can see these are all monks. All the monks have shaven head. They are having guns. And you can see their shoes are different from soldier boots. They are usually the shoes that they wear in the temple. So here basically means during the war, some of the Buddhist monks, Zen monks, got involved in war and they were trained during the war period. So this is a kind of interesting research how Japanese Buddhism during the World War II get involved in the war situation. So now, this is a recent book, 2010. This published by Oxford University Press. And if you look at it here on the bottom, you can see some people here in this class who are from Myanmar may be able to read it because they are Burmese characters, and you can see young monk, novice, is holding a pistol, and you can see a river here, And so that's the cover image of a book called Buddhist Warfare, published in 2010 by Oxford University Press. And now this image, it's doubtful whether this image, how it came, but it is, maybe I wonder whether the novice monk was encouraged to hold the pistol and then the photographer took the photo. Now here there is an ethical issue I want to draw in terms of media and the Buddhist publication. These are violation of ethics because they're similar to violating the rights of children, because probably this young monk consent has not been obtained to take this photo and also to publish it. So this here you can see not only war, but even in our academic work, we are violating the rights of the people. Of course, it's a destruction of Buddhism, but also the whether even if it is a genuine photo, whether the consent was obtained from the young novice. There's an ethical issue, yeah? So here, I wanted to, let me go back and stop here for the moment, because then I can start from here. And let me see, and all of you are, I wonder, let me see, guys, I'm going to see all who is here. Okay, I'm just looking at the who is here. So if you have any questions, you have a button here, and you can raise your hands, and I'm looking at all of you just quickly. So if you have, we have a chat, you can write it there also, I think. I'm opening the chat here. So you can write a message or ask a question. Where is our Meishi? Anybody has any questions? I cannot hear you. You have to unmute. First unmute and then talk. Yeah. So we are going to have a few minutes discussion. If anybody has any questions or clarification.
Yes, sir. Yes, I have questions, sir.
Yes, please tell me your name and ask the question, please.
Yes, sir. I'm Buddhist monk. You can do. Do you hear me? I'm Buddhist monk. You can do from Myanmar, but I'm on nation. Now I stay in Thailand. A student of IBSC. Hear me, Professor? Do you hear me?
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm very glad to hear your explanation concerning with the war in nowadays at present time. So how can we, I would like to argue, how can we stop war crime in the world nowadays? We know that, so throughout the world now fighting each other, just like, for example, Hamas and Israel nowadays fighting with problems between with two countries. So in this case, how can we stop this war by Buddhist peaceful means?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. What I will do is a good question, because we just had only the introduction. I will kind of leave this to the end to answer this question, because I think it will be clear after I talk about 1.5 hours how we can stop war crimes. It will be a little bit clear. If not, we will we can ask the question again. Thank you for this one. So I will leave it. What I meant was up to this point, what I covered, whether it was clear. Any other questions? Yeah. You can unmute and talk, or you can, there's a button on the bottom usually that you can raise your hand. So and in the chat box, you can write your name and I have a question. While you are listening to me, in the chat box, you can write questions too. That's good, yeah? So everybody's all right, or is there anybody else to ask questions?
So far, it's clear. Yes.
Please tell. Oh, everybody's happy?
Yes. Everybody is clear.
Okay, so we'll move to the next one, yeah? Okay. Thank you. I'm just taking, but this Burmese monk who asked the question is very valuable one. We will try to answer at the end if it's not answered throughout the course. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And now you may want to write down or take a photo of this slide, because this is the central point. This is the central point with regard to today's topic. Kind of war and laws and ethics. We concern today ethics and laws in war. That's our concern. Now, in relation to it, there is two questions, critical questions. This is the question that we are going to answer for this session. This is the question I plan to answer, if it's possible, to these two questions. The first one, can war ever be morally justified? So this is the kind of idea. War is there. There's a lot of violence there, a lot of killing there. But we wanted to see whether we can make arguments, good arguments. Moral means like issues about good and bad, right and wrong, justice and injustice. In that way, can we make good arguments for war? That's what it means. And can we be satisfied making a good argument? That's called moral philosophy, the philosophy that has to do with morals. So the war can be justified morally. This is the question that we wanted to ask. Whether war has a place, whether war should have a place, yeah, or whether one can make war a better place. That's the question. And then, in particular, Buddhism comes the second one. Is it ever morally justifiable to take another human being's life? From a Buddhist point of view, is it ever morally justifiable to take another human being's life? So the Buddhism will ask, we take 5 precepts. The first precept is abstaining from killing. And now abstaining from killing, panatipata veramani, it's not only human beings, all living beings. So in particular, in this case, war involves killing a lot of human beings, voluntarily or involuntarily. But can, in that respect, war be morally justified? Can taking human life be justified? So this is the critical question that concerns us. Okay, so keep it in mind. So let's move. Yeah. So now I want to show you 2 images, and some of you may not like it. If you don't like it, you can close your eyes, yeah? But these 2 images that I am going to show you are quite important. They are important because at least the first image changed the whole affair of war. Especially the American public opinion change, yeah? So now, these 2 images show misery, the pain, the suffering. I see someone is using a phone in the class, but it shouldn't be done, I think. Someone is using the phone, mobile phone. I just saw it. Shouldn't be done it. Disrespectful. Yeah? Okay. So, misery, the images there shows the misery, the pain, and the suffering. And now, these are those 2 cases. So, this image This image come from Vietnam, and during the war 1959 to 75, and this shows casualties during the war, and you can see the soldiers at the back and the people running away, and people forget that they don't have clothes. People forget that they don't have clothes even. So this is the reality. The war situation put innocent people in a difficult situation. Yeah. I hear someone is speaking. Can you switch off your mic, please? I hear someone is speaking.
Yes.
Who is speaking? Can you close your microphone? Yeah, someone is speaking. Okay, good. So now, this image, when it was published, it changed the American opinion, and that's how American public opinion changed during Vietnam War. And it shows the misery related to war. And then the other one is not the same, but it's the Spanish War in the early part of 19th century. And it's a press corps. And I want to look at these photos. And you can see on the left, you can see one human being lying there on the tree. And on this side, there is a man tied to the tree. On the other part, you can see a man is hanging from his legs, and on the other branch is the head and the hand and so on. So this was a graphic illustration of what happens in war. Of course, they didn't have a mobile phone, internet those days. It was mutilation and what the enemies undergo, enemies or whatever. So this is also shows what the war has to do. So these two photos, this one, that one, I think tells a lot about innocent people and average people, what they undergo during the war. So now, let's move to the next area. War's relation to ethical problems. Yeah. And now here, there can be many ethical problems, but I identify one here. War's relation to poverty. Because nobody wants to be poor, to be prosperous, wealthy, and have a happy life. Nobody wanted to be poor. But there's a strong link between war and poverty. And that be you. So if the war increases poverty, then war becomes unethical. See, you understand what I'm trying to say? The link between here, war and poverty. So you could argue war is unethical because it increased poverty. And I will give you some examples. Now, this is kind of a little bit old, but one of the reports the United Nations produced, and it reported that 25,000 people die of hunger or hunger-related causes every day. And this may be more. More than 25,000 people world around will die. It may be more. And according to this statistics, that means one person every 3.5 seconds. So because of not having food, every 3 seconds, a person dies. Now that's the reality. And then, what war does is poverty. And now this is a good example. Now think about Ukraine and Russia. Think about Israel and Palestine war, these two examples. And so when the war disrupts, the food systems collapse. And we know that we are paying more for our food than 3 years ago, partly because of Corona, partly because of Ukraine war. Yeah, and it will be more with Israel and Palestine war. Very careful. So this is kind of the decline of food production. That's a very important one because agricultural land get affected, and then rapid inflation of food prices, and then people cannot go to jobs or to buy food. They don't make money, and then the war destroys infrastructure, the roads and so on. So it weaken. I can still hear the voice. Can you mute your phone, please? It disturbs me, my concentration. I cannot, because I'm doing it remotely. Any noises affects me. So please mute all your microphones because I cannot concentrate and direct you on the right direction. Yeah, my thoughts also lost. Please completely switch off your mobile phone or put in airplane mode. Yeah. So basically, war destroys infrastructure and it weakens support in daily life. And then it destroys water systems and energy and hospitals. These are essential services. And most importantly, war displaces people from their homes. People become homeless. Its impact for children cannot go to schools. And the gap between male and female and the gender inequality and more pressure for women to feed their children. It exposes people to extreme violence, rape and abuse and so on. These are all happening over time. Yeah, that's also important slide if you want to take a photo, but you can take it if you want. Yeah, and then another important point, because I was talking about war and poverty, kind of relation with war to the aid from abroad. In October 2007, Oxfam announced the cost of war for Africa since the end of Cold War was $6 billion. Yeah, this is the kind of the put money for the war, and then the devastating fact is amount 306 million was equivalent to all the foreign aid that African continent received. You wonder about why there are so many wars, violence in Africa and poverty and so on, African continent. And the reason is very clear here. All the aids that they got from abroad has not done any difference on the ground because all that money is being used almost or equivalent amount is used for war. So that means war is counterproductive for development. War is counterproductive for improvement of social standards. So there is an ethical ground here. Foreign aid doesn't help because when the war is continuing. So there are contradictions in terms. So there's an ethical issue here. So that's I showed you how the war is related to the poverty, it's an ethical issue. Now I'm going to talk about cost of war. Cost of war, I have to rush it through. I think 1 hour is finished and we have still 1 more hour. Hope I can cover, but let's see. The cost of war. We don't have real statistics or measurements for human or material cost of war. Very, very little. And now, for example, I can give you some available data for the cost of war, for example, in relation to World War II. For the US, it was, in today's numbers, it's 4 trillion for World War II. And for 4 years, for 1942 to 45, they spend that much money. Drastically, when the United States is concerned, in 1945, defense spending was 40% of the gross national. Can you imagine? 40% of the gross national product has gone to the World War II. So only 60%. So you can see the cost of war. And in the same time, UK had a debt of 21 billion for the World War II. So you see the impact of the World War II. Now, Vietnam War, think about the cost for the America. I saw a photograph earlier, but more than 50,000 American deaths, 150,000 were wounded, and it cost about 1 trillion. And still, you know, US pays about 22 billion per year in war compensations to Vietnam veterans and their families. You can see the war, even after war ends, the expenditure we have to bear. So that's the problem of cost. How much does it cost? You know, in including veterans care and total budgetary costs and future obligations of the post 9/11, WARS takes about 8 trillion from the US budget. Can you imagine? You know, kind of cost, how much money is gone. And now here, another book from Routledge. This is from Helen Fovey. You may want to look at this book. And it talks about ethics of war. It was published in 2011. And it has about some ideas about war and peace and defense and so on. This is the book, and you may want to have a look at it, yeah? And now, let's hand in Russia-Ukraine war. You know, kind of, it is estimated the reconstruction of war-torn annexed territories would cost Russia between 100 and 200 billion. In Mariupol alone, reconstruction will cost about 14 billion. And then in Ukraine war, these quite old figures, more than 8,000 civilian deaths. This is very important, civilian death. Is concerned about war ethics. And now, out of that, 487 are children, unacceptable, yeah? 11,000 wounded. And then there are 13,000 soldiers dead. And 3,500 Ukrainian soldiers are in captivity, yeah? And now the damage of invasion cost, totally 137 billion. Now here, very important for our talk, during the complete destruction of 344 bridges. Like earlier I mentioned about poverty and infrastructure. These are the infrastructure. 344 bridges, 444 educational facilities, 173 hospitals. So these are those war crimes. You know, earlier there was how we can stop war crimes. Answer is there. So kind of, and then Ukraine produced steel, but also agricultural. The collapse of the steel industry and agricultural products. And 47 of Ukrainian companies stopped operation, that means half. Now, monthly, Ukraine depends on outside budgetary support to run the government businesses. 3 to 4 million monthly Ukraine needs. And who is going to give? World governments, all the donors. So you can see the relation between war and poverty and lack of. So now 8 million Ukraine refugees outside the country, 5 million internally displaced out of the 43 million. So they're now homeless people, refugees, and all these issues come. Now, cost of Palestinian war, you may want to remember. Direct cost of Israel's war in Gaza cost 246 million daily. Based on October 26, the daily cost. And now, yesterday, I heard 8,726 Palestinians killed. And 2,913 by 26 were minors. That means children. And now this is very serious. And Israel has said Gaza borders, they have closed. Foreign journalists and humanitarian workers are not allowed to go. And Israel claims that 1,700 civilians and soldiers are killed from their side. And 309 soldiers, and 250 or so, 30 or so hostages are taken, and accusation of hospital bombing. Now, these are all come under two levels. One, impact to the poverty, but also war crimes, and increases the the poorness of the people. And this is the area that we are talking about. This area in the ocean. This side, the yellow area, is the Israel, and this on the left is the Egypt, and this is kind of 26-mile long area that we are talking about. And now here, the thing is that this area covers about 365 kilometers, 46 square kilometers, and 41 miles long, and 6 to 12 kilometers wide, depending on this. And this is the Hamas are active in this area. Yeah. Now, in terms of Gaza, UN report 80% of Palestinian Gaza depended on international aid before the current war. So now, can you imagine? Now, if there are 2 million population, out of 2 million, 80% dependent on international aid. And now, can you imagine what happened after the war? And in March 2000, US has provided Israel 158 billion. And there are a few other statistics, kind of 1955 to 2002, it is estimated 5.4 million violent war deaths. And tragically part, this comes to war crimes on the middle. And in wars around the world, this is quite old. In 14 countries, child soldiers are used as fighters. And child soldiers are unacceptable. It's a war crime. Now, I have given you some cost of war. And now I'm going to move to a key aspects. And now this next slide, you want to take a photo. Because this is where the heart of my talk is going to be. And, kind of ethical position on war. Here I identified three. One is realism, pacifism, and just war theory. And the first one, realism, kind of idea, I say that war is not rejected in international politics. And this comes from inspired by a very famous thinker, Machiavelli, famous political thinker. And he says politics have no relation to morals. So that means politics has no idea of good and bad. And basically, it says that states are guided by national interest. Do not have to answer moral norms. So this is the key idea. Each government take the national interest first, so they may not respect the right and wrong. And that kind of based on a key philosopher, political philosopher, Machiavelli. Politics have no relation to moral. Yeah. And then that's the kind of where the war is justified. Yeah? War is legitimate. And then pacifism, another trend, basically say pacifism means basically war can never be justified. There's no right reason for war. And good arguments cannot be made in relation to pacifism. And the third one is the just war theory, that war is real, but war can be accepted in certain circumstances. This is very important. In certain circumstances, good aspects of the war can be seen. That's what just war theory is. Yeah? When nonviolent means are exhausted and certain moral criteria are met, war can be fought. The last point highlight the thing that all nonviolent means we have employed have failed. Then, when certain good criteria are met, you can fight the war. That means just war theory. Got it? So now, let me stop here before I go to the next area, and ask up to this point whether you have any questions.
Hello, teacher. May I ask question, teacher?
Yes, please
My name is-
state your name and ask the question.
Yes, my name is teacher. I'm studying at BSc. So I would like to ask question. Why do you take care of what, teacher?
I cannot hear you.
Why do you take care of what, teacher?
Meishi, can you explain to me? I cannot understand it. Meishi?
Why do you take care of what, teacher?
Meishi, can you help me? I cannot
What's
understand the question.
So we can clear your question.
Why do you take care of what, teacher?
Oh, she said, what you take care and what?
Why
What you
do
take
why
care?
take care of what? Yes, teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah,
take
I
care
still
of
cannot understand. I don't understand any meaning what asking. Can she tell in Thai and then Meishi can translate into English, please?
So, please, mate, you must type in the chat box. You must type in the chat box. You must type in the chat box to the teacher.
Okay, we will go to the next.
Okay.
We'll go to the next question. Next, any other person? Okay, then we will move to the next section. Yeah. So the person who asked the question can write the chat box. Yeah. Okay. And thank you. And I still hear some voices earlier. So please mute your microphone. Yeah. And it distracts me. Yeah. And also distract other students. Thank you. So we'll go to the next one. So not just for theory. This has a Christian basis, religious basis, but it has become an international law, and this is very important that you understand it. Yeah. So, who is speaking? Okay. So there's another book here. This one is called Just War Revisited. It's published by Cambridge. It is also a very important one. If you want to know more about just war theory, just have a look at this book, and it is a critical view, very good one. Yeah, it's beyond what I am doing. Yeah, okay, wonderful. So now I'm going to give you a little bit history, the history of just war theory. You know, this was began in the 4th century and 5th century. You can see 354, 430, and it was developed by a Catholic theologian called Augustine, Saint Augustine, and this was the time of Constantine. You know, kind of this is the first time that Christianity became state religion. And then war was apparent there. So the Christian thinkers start responding. So Augustine is the first one to address it. And then came Crusade on the 13th century, after the Crusades, you know, 1225 to 74. Thomas Aquinas, another Christian philosopher, added it. So these are the two important great thinkers behind the just war theory. They are the ones who gave the essential features, how war can be fought legitimately, how ethics could be part of war. And that became called the just war, or morally justified war. And then in modern period, like people like Walcher has developed it. Now, this slide is very important. Take a photo. because this is very important one. And here you can see 3 Roman numbers, 1, 2, 3. They refers to real situations and how just theory works. Now there's a context. Earlier, just war theory, more religious thinking and so on. And then at the World War II, 1940s, there was a Nuremberg trial. And during this trial, 2 key aspects emerged. That's A, like Roman numeral 1 and Roman numeral 2. These 2 ideas appeared, and they are in Latin language, jus ad bellum and jus in bello. And basically, they refers to basically questions of, like here say, when, how, what. The first one refers to when is the right time to go to war. You know, if the war can be done, when should we go to war? That's the first question. So here basically a moral justification for engaging in war. So the first one gives, you know, the ethical reasons to fight the war. The second, jus in bello, basically tells about the process. How should war be waged? You know, how should be waged before? So here basically conduct moral behavior during war. So this is the kind of how soldiers and organizations should behave during the war. And then we can consider the third one. Now, what? Just post bellum. That means after the war. After the war, what should we do? What should be the conduct after the war? Because war is, when war is finished, you have to do something. So here, like a reconciliation, you know, displaced person, bringing it back, developing economy, harmony, and so on. So here basically 3 ideas: during the war, before the war, during the war, after the war. That's how you can remember it. Before the war, during the war, after the war. So those are the 3 key phases of just war theory. And now I'm going to give a little bit more detail. And this slide also important that you take a note. And now earlier I mentioned these 3 areas, you know, when, what, when, how, what. And this is how they are divided. Like, you know, the when is the kind of we have to consider about, you know, what you're going to achieve, ends, just in balloon, what are you going to achieve? And there are 7, you know, 7 reasons for before going to the war. And then during the war, just some bello, that means what you adopt, how, what kind of things you will do to justify your thing. And then last, you know, after the war is over, what you will do, that's the 10. So basically, today's world, just war has 10 points. Very important that you remember these things. So first one is a just cause, and we will explain it, you know, kind of if the wage is war is wage, you should know the reasons for the war, you know, the why you wage the war. And then if the way is waged, you know, with war is waged, then be declared by a competent and legal authority. So, and now there's of course question, which is that UN or somebody else? And then third, comparative justice. Like you have to always think about parties. Justice for both parties must be compared. Like, you know, kind of what is fair for the enemies and you. And then most importantly, right intention. We should have a right reason, right intention to do the war. And then the 5th one, you go to the war as the last resource. You know, we talked about earlier, when everything, all non-violent means exhausted, you go to the war. And then, before you go to the war, you have to say that you have to come, you can come back safely with success after the war. And if you cannot come back, you should not go to the war. And then 7 means proportionate to end, so that when you are fighting, you have to look at the enemy and use the amount of violence that they do, and you have to respond to that amount of violence. So you cannot use excessive violence. For example, if somebody is fighting a war, you cannot use nuclear weapons, for example, chemical weapons, things like that, because it's out of proportion. So you have to see means proportionate to end. So injustice suffered and death and suffering in war, they have to be proportionate. So all of these has to be considered before you go to the point. And then you come to the middle one, which is called proportionality and discrimination. These are the during the war, and I'm going to explain a little bit about this proportionality and discrimination, and also what you do after that. The proportionate, like a punishment to individuals, and then after the war, you have to respect the people who was suffered, displaced people, and so on. So this is basically internationally accepted ethical way to wage a war today. Now, how the war can be legitimate. Yeah. Now here, what happening is that I have these points, and you can see these numbers. Some of these numbers are discussed in the next section, like 5 here. Here basically refers to 5 here, last resort. So the 5 refers to last resort. That's what this is about. So having this the shot with you, I myself will do it because it's helpful for me also, even though I have it to refer to it. So I will take myself one. So I have the slide with me. So the 5 refers to last resort. Now, last resort, question, reasons for, when is the last resort? What are the reasons for it? A last resort maybe like somebody will say that, oh, I want to defend, or we want to defend the citizens. That would be one reason. And we want to defend the nation state, land, liberty. Like maybe, for example, Israel arguing on this point at the moment, kind of nation state is threat to the Israel state, and threat to the Israel land and liberty. And also the Hamas will be arguing the similar situation. Yeah, similar concern. Kind of it depends on how they, but they and then expansion of territory and wealth. This could be not right reasons, but definitely an argument. You want to expand your territory and influence. Claiming a right to territory, that's also, and also religion, to defend one's own religion, and political ideals. And then there's a crimes happening and you want to intervene, humanitarian intervention. And then retribution to the wrong, kind of people who have done the wrong. So these are some of the reasons that people can use for using war as a last resort. Now here, number 7 refers to, in the first part, means should be proportionate. Kind of, this is kind of morality, means ethics in war, a vital issue. And people are affected by warfare, and modern warfare is not confined to combatants. Civilians and civilian installation get affected. In this context, even though it could be proportionate, can war ever be justified? In what circumstances can it right to wage war? So these questions come before the war. And then this is about the first cause, just cause, for example. And now here, some of the just causes is national defense and defense of another state against unjust external aggression. Like, for example, Hamas attack in kibbutz can be seen as external aggression, and the recovery of rights lost through unjust aggression, like maybe Hamas may see Israel as occupiers, kind of things like that, in punishment of unjust aggression, kind of invasion and so on. And then humanitarian intervention. This is the most legitimate one. E is the most legitimate one as a right reason. Humanitarian intervention to protect human rights. If the people are violated, that's what we should do. And then these three, it's related to them. These kind of numbers refer to the right cause. The kind of in today's world, there's always dispute. What is right. How far we can go to make things right. Is it possible to make it right? This right cause can be problematic. And the right intention, even though there is a right intention, it may be disguised. It may be a cloak for land grabbing. Yeah. And then, for example, other things, last resort, it follows, unsuccessful negotiation could be one reason for go for war. And then, most important thing in just war theory is a conditional one. Only under certain conditions war can be justified, as we saw. Augustine and Aquinas suggested Cicero. But I wanted to draw your attention to the bullet number 4. War is a terrible thing. Everybody agrees. But there are conditions in which the wrongs of killing, etc., in war are required and morally justified. So if the war is terrible, and if a lot of innocent things, people are affected, then there are reasons for going to war. Yeah. And this is also interesting in regard to intention, because it's not very easy for us to see the intention of the people who wage war. And like in the Gulf War period, people were always accusing the US was interested in oil, for example. These are kind of disputed issues. And then authority, kind of the who has the authority to go to war? Is it the nation state has authority to go to war, or the UN or body like that has the authority to decide to go to war? And now questions about last resort. How do we know whether war is a last resort? Because we haven't go to the war. So there's a kind of idea that we will never know the usefulness of war. Kind of it's an argument for pacifism. And a probability of success, same thing. Unless you started the war, how can you calculate? How can you measure the success? Is it really possible? Questions. So now, interesting thing is, maybe this point is important. Proportionality. The idea called proportionality. That means that the war use should be proportionate, and you have to measure the amount of harm caused by war should be less than harm prevented. Kind of that's the kind of the target. Yeah. And also there are issues like this. The cost of war, if so was high, then you should avoid the war. Yeah. So these are few items. Then in the war, when you fight the war, these are few things that you have to consider. We have to use not heavy force, minimal force, minimum attack. And you have to discriminate and proportionate what you do. And minimal force we can see is like only the amount of force necessary to achieve a given objective, such as winning a battle. No more should be employed. So only to suppose that if you want to catch terrorists, it should be aimed only for that one, and then with minimal force. And then not unnecessary slaughter of combatants. Even soldiers have rights, not only civilians. So that also has to be mindful. Discrimination. So you have to see the military objectives, kind of hospitals, schools, civilian residences, homes should not be targeted, and they are not legitimate target. So you can target only when war is accepted, only military targets, soldier targets, military weapons storage facilities. Those things can be targeted. That's what you have to discriminate. So military attack should be proper. So in fighting, militaries must discriminate between illegitimate and legitimate target. Only military objectives are legitimate. Combatants you can target, but not civilians. So, for example, the women, children are protected. Yeah. So now I'm going to stop for a few minutes because we still have 35 minutes to finish everything. And I wanted to go to international conventions, but I have done almost everything except this last bit. So I have covered just for theory now. So now, anybody want to raise any question? If not, I can move quickly. Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
So, somebody has a question? Yeah?
Yes, he typed in the chat box, Master.
Or you're going to do in the chat box? Okay, wonderful. Then we will finish it off and come to the chat box, yeah? Okay, wonderful. So, international convention, these are the conventions accepted world over, and these come from the called Geneva Convention. And it's a very important one. And I have the little book for this, and now this one is the kind of the abridged version of Geneva Conventions, kind of prepared by International Committee Red Cross. And this kind of proposed in 1949, 12th August. And this gives you a basic guideline which soldiers should follow. And now the size of the book, you can imagine what is used. That means a soldier can keep this book in his pocket. Yeah. So that means that this is the manual that you should use in the war, to prevent not doing injustice. So this is basically law related to armed conflict. How the internationally accepted manner you can fight a war. How so it's very interesting. So this one in 1977. They added protocols 1 and 2 to the original 91. So basically, it talks about protecting individual civilians in civilian population, civilian objects like schools, hospitals, and cultural objects like mosques, churches, and so on, places of worship, archaeological monuments. These are things. So these are any of these things, individual civilian population, worship, they should not be targeted. So that answer to the war crime situation. So if you early we had a war crime question. So if we if we harm any of these people, then it's a war crime. Yeah. Now, important question comes: who is a combatant? Who is a soldier? And do they have to be armed by the time actually fighting? Questions. Is it ever legitimate to target civilians? No. Is it morally worse to kill civilian children than civilian adults? No. This is an interesting question. This is an interesting question for, I want this bullet number 4. Interesting question for you to remember. Which is worse, killing a child or killing an adult? Is there a difference? Like, for example, killing a child, killing an adult, or killing a vulnerable person, like an aged person. Why? Some of the things that you have to think about. And yeah. Now, UN has a UN Security Council. And now bullet point 2 refers to these 5 members: US, Russia, China, France, and UK. These are the 5 members of the Security Council, and they have veto in power, and they can stop any decision taken by the Security Council. And these are kind of situations that we are in. The UN Charter allows that UN Security Council can authorize military action that is not clearly a defense against aggression on the grounds of a threat to international peace. So the UN can validate if certain group is threat to the international peace, but then it has to go through the Security Council. So now, before closing, I should mention about this International Committee of the Red Cross, the people who produced this book. And this is the International Committee of the Red Cross. Is the international body that is present in crisis, especially in war. And earlier they were more interested in Christianity, but since 2017, they wanted to discuss about how Buddhism can be meaningfully used for warfare, or how Buddhist soldiers use Buddhist guidelines to find a just war, basically. So we had a conference. The title of the conference was Reducing Suffering from During Armed Conflict. So basically, this is the kind of the second point in just war theory. How aimed at exploring how Buddhism can be useful. So the first conference was held in Dambulla in 2019, and then recently, like last week, the book came. This one, not all the papers, not even my papers that included in it, but some of the papers were published here. So you may know to publication is available on internet also. For Buddhist community in Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar. And it's particular in Myanmar because there is a civil war in Myanmar. And so kind of familiarizing this area will be very useful. Very, very important article. And my paper there was about collateral damage. The collateral damage is that when you target a military target, what happened to civilians? What kind of what is the situation? Is collateral damage accepted in Buddhism? International law accepted, but does Buddhism accept the law? That was the harm to the innocent. That was the issue, and then war crimes. So now I'm going to conclude, and then we can go to the questions. this is my conclusion. And ethics and laws are central to modern warfare. So that means war is accepted as a part of international policy. And UN and other international bodies like Council and so on take war crimes seriously. And what is war crimes? War crimes are, like, for example, violation of human rights, harming prisoners of war, using child soldiers, inflicting suffering to non-combatants, that means civilians basically, targeting civilian installations like hospitals, schools, markets, city centers, and so on. They are all serious war crimes. So any military should avoid doing this kind of thing. Of course, this should include like using rape as a weapon of war. This is also occurring. It's kind of very serious crimes. It's become a war crime. So militaries must adhere to rules of war. So when the rules of war are accepted, the war can be justified. Now, IHL, produce, kind of the Geneva Convention laws, kind of help actually to minimize suffering, minimize war, the impact of war, collateral damage, and unnecessary damage. And as you can see, when I began, I saw you image of making a new world. That's a good example of destruction. So that kind of the following IHL can minimize the damage to the environment, the nature, and so on. So, conclusion is, in the warfare, in the battlefield, using ethics and laws can minimize suffering. So that's the important one. Following ethics and laws enable minimize suffering. So that's all. Thank you. And now let's go to our question time. So let me see the chat box. Let's see. Oh, there are 3 questions. Okay. So now there's a first question. My name is Achinna. I am a MA student, Peace Studies. I would like to ask this question. Since independence in Myanmar has experienced long civil war until now, if you are a Myanmar monk, this problem, how do you help and take responsibility? Okay, I'm not very clear. Since independence, Myanmar has experienced a long civil war until now. Oh, I read the question. It's asking, as a Myanmar monk, how do you take responsibility for the war? Yeah, I interpret like that. And which section will be involved? What should participate in help? And as a monk, stop the problem of the civil war. Okay. Very, very good. It's a kind of lot of ideas there, but basically, Myanmar has been waging war with several militant groups like Karim and so on. They are actually not official armies, but they are actually come under guerrilla warfare. So I think the responsibility, I think, recent years lies with the Myanmar military. And I do not think, as a monk, you have any responsibility to the war, other than as a civilian. Because I think if you think you are responsible, what you should do as a civilian is educating the military. educating the military commanders to wage a war in a proper manner, following these IHL laws, and also reading this book, using those articles, encouraging Myanmar military to read them, and then perhaps even to reach out to a Malaysian group and educate them. And I think that's the way I think can be responsible. And I think to stop civil war, if it is the case in Myanmar, you have to understand why they are waging war. You have to do a little bit explanation why Karin and others are waging war. And once you, or even Rohingya, kind of, you have to ask the issues. They may have issues like land, language, like in Rohingya's case that, they don't have citizenship, for example. So I think if you wanted to stop the war, I think that you have to convince the politicians and military government to address these issues, and that's how you can avoid the civil war and military. And this applies to all other contexts too. I hope that answers your question. Then there's another question. Jutarat from Thailand, first year PhD student, please say, do peace talks actually help in preventing a war? Any good use case where peace talk did help in the past? Oh, see, I mean, this question kind of idea, the doubt about the peace talks, and because peace talks is basically an opportunity for ceasefire, and ceasefire are usually used both by the militants and the forces to empower them, get a little bit break and find resources and empower them. That happens. But I think the positive side of peace talks is based benefits to the civilians. Peace talks are basically benefits to the civilians. So, like, for example, when there are peace talks and ceasefire, the vulnerable people, like the sick people, can get medical treatment. And when there are peace talks and ceasefire, children can go to school, and the farmers can do the agriculture. And when there is a sense of stability, investment comes. Things like that. So peace talks are not necessarily bad, but they give time for negotiations. Peace talks enable negotiation, because more important do the negotiations than the fight of war, because negotiations cost less, fighting war costs more and involve human lives. So peace talks are good, ceasefires are good, and I think those two opportunities people use to come to an agreeable solution with the warring parties, and then peace talks are very meaningful, and I think peace talks can minimize suffering to the innocent. And this is Venerable Nguyen, MA Buddhist Studies program, Peace Studies program. As a professor, as a peace activist, what practical activities have you done to demonstrate your peaceful stance in the face of recent conflict? Russia versus Ukraine, Israel versus Palestine, and are we monarchists? In what form can we express our voice and views for peace? I want to hear experience. The first question is basically asking what I have done in relation to Ukraine war, Palestine war. I haven't done nothing. I have done nothing, but at least I have done this presentation to educate you and the grave dangers in war. Of course, it in a way going in that direction. And that's the only way I can help. And I think we must influence the politicians, the policymakers, and military leaders, and so on. It's there. But I don't have to take the responsibility for all of this, because these are big issues. As an individual person, you can do only very little thing. I think what is important, however, we all doing something what we could do. Education. Yeah. And then next one, Chittavara. How do you think of civil war in Myanmar occurred up to the present? Because of, it hides me. Let's see. How do you think of civil war in Myanmar occurred up to the present because of many ethnic groups or not? So the last question is not very clear to me. It's not very visible, but I guess that I think it's asking basically, is civil war in Myanmar, has it resulted from ethnic groups? That may not be the reason, because not because of ethnic group, because I mean, think about all these developed nations like US, UK, Japan, and most of the countries in Eastern Europe have a relative peace. So society is very peaceful, and life security is there. And the reason is that it doesn't mean that they have only one group, because like, you know, the ethnic groups are like in countries like US and England, very complex. So not necessarily living diverse people is not a problem. Diversity is not the problem. The problem is, how do you handle the diversity? How do you handle the diversity? So suppose that civil war in Myanmar and so on, I think we have not handled the diversity effectively. Like, for example, Shan versus Burman. I mean, the Sun is not fighting, but there are issues. Sun state, you know, Karin is taking a military part. So there, I think it's a failure of the state to recognize the importance of these ethnic groups and diversity, and make effective policies. And this is true to Sri Lanka also, and to some extent to Thailand. So we as Buddhist nations, or if we call Buddhist, we have to make the policies Buddhist. We have to make state policies Buddhist. We have to act like Buddhists, you know, because we cannot be cardboard Buddhists, because most of the time Buddhists have become not transparent, not integral. So I think the governance of a country should be open-minded, non-biased, recognition of all citizens. We have to take the Ashoka's word. Ashoka says, all people are my children. You know, that's what Ashoka says in inscription, King Ashoka. All people are my children. So we have to have an attitude, Buddhist and non-Buddhist, Burma and non-Burmese, and everybody are my children, my people. And so we have to have that attitude to everybody. So that's where I think civil war can be stopped. Civil war can be minimized, I think. Okay, so now, where is our chair, Maishi? Okay, any more questions on the audience if you want to talk? Yeah, Maishi, how?
Yeah, I got one, Professor.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yes, name and the question, please.
Okay. My name is Indiga and I'm from Myanmar too. And my question is like about the role of ethic in Theravada countries. Like we have 5 countries which follows Theravada Buddhism, like the Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodian, Laos. So in these 5 countries, we see often, like, how to say, these countries do not develop, and many corruptions are there, and many like injustice and all these things are there. But at the same time, we Buddhists always claim that we preach the 5 precepts and all these things. But it seems like even though we claim ourselves to be Buddhists, but we are not really true Buddhists, in a sense that in these 5 countries, to some extent, we have all this injustice and corruptions. That's why all these countries, they cannot develop. So what is your idea about the role of ethics in these 5 countries?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting question. And these 5 countries, they are Theravada countries. See, I think we have to first ask, what do we mean by development? You know, what do we mean by development? That means like we are closer to attaining nirvana, or do we mean like we have a house to live on, we have a job to do, we have enough salary, and our children are safe in the street, our children have a good education, and the girls can improve and find employment and education, and the healthy people, sick people have medicine. All of these, or good roads and buses and trains, that also kind of development. Like if you take all of these, the latter one, all of these countries after 1948, for example, have some material progress, like Bangkok. The first time I went to Bangkok was 1987, my first visit outside Sri Lanka. And that Bangkok is not the same Bangkok today. Definitely Bangkok has improved and financially rich, and the country has developed. So it doesn't mean all of these countries not developed. I think these Buddhist society.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like among these 5 countries, only we can say Thailand is a bit far than others. But in general, I mean, like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and even Sri Lanka, they are quite far behind. Even in terms of Southeast Asian countries, their development is quite far below. Of course, when I say development, I do refer to those material development and also the mental development as well. For example, like in Myanmar, since we got independent, we have been in civil war for long until this day. And not only in Myanmar, even like in Cambodian, they do not have a proper government, we can say, like, and even in Laos as well, like this kind of like a mix of dictatorship and democracy, but dictatorships tend to be more powerful and dominant in these 5 countries. So this is my question, because like Buddhist, especially Theravada, always talk about compassion, loving kindness, and all these things. But the current situation seems to be a bit contradiction to these qualities.
Yeah, thank you for explanation. See, I think you have got confused yourself, because the material progress, if we see it, there's significant development. And you are talking about mental development. And mental development is the one actually going backtrack, because if all these countries had the mental development which they had, they wouldn't have been in the situation now. So So that I don't think. I think all of these countries have developed. All of the countries have developed materially. What is lacking is that we have not been able to handle effectively the minorities. That's what the problem is. The minorities and the diverse people we have not handled well. Like, for example, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a democratic system. But when the British were there, British had the law and order. The law and order was there. So even until 1983, until then, country was very peaceful. So now what happened is law and order disappeared. So if you compare Bangkok with Singapore, for example, the difference is that Singapore has tighter laws, strict laws, almost dictator type. And because of that, Singapore is prospering. And look at Malaysia. Malaysia, very healthy society. People are very peaceful, at least in Kuala Lumpur. But it has not gone that far as Singapore. But, you cannot blame to a Buddhist tradition or Buddhist groups are doing it. But even like if you take Malaysia and Singapore, you can see the difference. And these are, you expect that everybody do the well. But what is important for us, I wanted to correct you something also. Like in Myanmar, people are very generous. And I remember I went to Yangon railway station. I'm quite a rich person comparing the people there. But the station master bought my ticket, train ticket, free of charge to Bagan. And I wanted to pay personal experience. Then, in Charity Index, a few years ago, Myanmar came number 1 around the world. And in terms of giving, Myanmar has more people practice charity in some level in Myanmar. So that means compassion is there. It doesn't mean we have less compassion. What we haven't done is our policymakers haven't found a very effective way of dealing with human rights, dealing with minorities, dealing with languages, dealing with providing jobs to minorities, making minorities happy. That's where we have to do. I think once we do it, our countries will develop faster than Singapore. Any other question? Where is Frank? Professor Frank, are you there? No, maybe it's too hard for him.
Yes, that's
Yeah, any if anybody has any other question?
It's not end of time. You sure?
Hmm?
It's not end of time.
Oh, no, it's not time. We have to close it now.
I think so. It's the end of time, right?
I don't know. Maishi has to decide it because he's in charge. I'm not. So Maishi has to decide.
Yeah, I think so. 14 to 16, right?
Yeah, but Maishi has to decide it.
Yes, it's up to you all. If you have any more questions, so feel free to ask Professor.
Yes, thank you. So I will start to Professor. Let's go questions, not so long. So my name is Venerable Kanti. I'm also from Myanmar, Mon State. Have you been Mon State, teacher, Professor?
No.
So I'm Mon Nation. Do you heard about in Myanmar there are so many ethnic groups? At the government recorded 135 ethnic groups in Myanmar.
Yeah, but can you go into the question, please?
So nowadays,
Your question. What is your question?
I like to ask it concerning with so many students interested to study peace study at IBSC. So they want, how can we stop war crimes nowadays at present time? So many as we can mention in war rights. Nowadays,
Are there war crimes in Myanmar?
No. I mean in war rights, not Myanmar. Not Myanmar. I mean throughout the world on war rights.
Yeah, but I think it's a too big topic because you should concern at least your country, because we cannot solve the world problems unless we solve our own problems.
Yes, you have to. If we compare with in throughout the world, I mean, not only our country, in other country also it's conflict. Conflict between each other. For example, in religious conflicts.
Yeah, but
right?
Tinita, what is your question? I cannot see the question.
I mean, how can we stop war crimes concerning with each other and between two countries and three countries? And also, how can we solve that problem between the two countries if war crime appear? So by using Buddhist peaceful means.
I think the war crimes are quite clear, and kind of as you said, I hope let me because you can see the screen. Can you? In conclusion, in the third bullet point, violation of human rights, harming prisoners of war, using child soldiers, inflicting suffering on non-combatants, targeting civilian installations, all are war crimes. So if anybody does this, it's a war crime. So this one, we have to educate people. We have to give these rules to the people and educate them. So as a monk, you have a role to educate them. So that's how we can stop the war crimes. And it's no point blaming others unless we educate them. So you have to tell the military government, you have to tell them that they must study international humanitarian law, for example. And then you may be able to do better with these militants like Karin and others. And you have to think about Rohingya issue. Rohingya issue is damaging to everybody, world over, all Buddhists. And it has derailed the relation between Muslims and Muslims all around the world. So you have to tackle that one, and you see that their citizenship is issue, and they become a group of landless people. And I think we have to be frank on this. We have to recognize the issue, and then if you tell them that they are not Burmese, that's not the answer. Because if they have been living in your country more than 100 years, their generations, and what you will do this, you throw them to the ocean? You cannot do that. That's the kind of the war crime, so you have to kind of think about creative ways of dealing with the issues in your own country, and that's how you help to prevent war crimes. And I think, the Rohingya example is a good example. I'm sorry taking this, but that seems to be the you have to be more Buddhist in approaching them, I think, looking at their grievance.
Hi.
Yes, please.
Okay, the first question related to Rohingya case. Of course, the world have been blaming the Myanmar for this Rohingya crisis, but we also obviously know that this issue is mainly committed by the military. But at the same time, we also know that the military has taken control over the country. But in terms of support from the international community to dethrone this military, but they haven't done so much, even though they know that military has committed this crime against humanity on the Rohingya case, and now even to the whole Myanmar country. But there are only statements from the international community, but there is no real action. So while they like claim themselves to be this how to say the activists are not like have been supporting this human rights and all these things, but in real action they do not really have impact as far as I see.
Recording stopped.
And this is my first question: why this happens like this? And the second question is, how do you think about the Venerable Nyanisara Tirugu Siaro and Insinyama Siaroji? Because these two monks or venerable, they are very, very respected in Myanmar, but at the same time they have been also very close to the military. Like last 2 years or 1 year, like even most venerable Nyanisara went to the Russia with the military leaders, and at the same time when he went there, and he even praised, not praised, give a speech, like how to say, pray for the peace of the Russia while Russia is invading Ukraine. So there are a lot of like this kind of this thing that happens at the moment. So what is your opinion on this? And I want to know this too.
About Ajahn Nyanisara, you are asking me?
Yeah, I mean, most venerable Nyanisara, he has been very quite close to the military leader, especially this.
Yeah,
leader.
I mean, what is wrong being? I don't know what you mean close, but
no, he has been like how to say. We know that he has the power to suggest the military to like reduce the crime and all this thing, and at the same time.
But will the military listen to him?
No, this is one case. I mean, whether the military listened or not, this is one case. But at least to show to the Myanmar people that at least he is the how to say the person who really appreciate peace, because in the end he himself is a Buddhist monk. So this is my point, because when he went to Russia,
but there's venerables, I'm sorry to point it out, but there's no point blaming Venerable Nyanisara, because
no, I'm not blaming. I mean, at least because nowadays I'm not sure have you read the news in Myanmar.
No, I haven't read. I don't know what you are saying.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, most of the Myanmar people, they like how to say, they are in how to say like to the most venerable Nyanisara now.
Yeah, but that's people's problem, no? Because we cannot change our it. But what is what
we cannot really say like that, Professor. I'm not trying to argue with you, but as a
Myanmar, but there's no relevance to this talk. You know, Venerable Nyanisara has no relevance to this talk.
No, yeah, I just want to know your opinion. I mean,
what is the opinion? I mean, I respect him. That's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's it. I mean, I just want to know, what do you think of him?
I respect him. He is called Sitagusiado, and you know, he's a important Palavin in Mandalay, and you know, he comes to Vesak conference to Bangkok. I mean, he's a senior monk, and I respect him. That's all.
Oh, okay.
I mean, what do you expect me to tell him?
No, okay. Don't get me wrong, please. I mean, I just want.
There's nothing wrong. I mean, what happened is that, you know, if Venerable Siado can tell the military to do things differently, he should have told, or he may have.
Okay. I will stop here.
But it is the military who has to decide to do what to do, you know, because, and you and I do not know what's going on there. I don't know myself. And, you know, as a senior monk, I respect him. That's all. Okay.
Okay, nobody, Professor. We have to close.
We have closed, yeah?
Yes.
But then Meisha has to finish it, no?
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. For today, I would like to say thank you to Professor Tigel, and because there are a lot of students and also the instructors as well to attend this program. So that means I wish that this program is beneficial to you all. And apart from that, if we not have Professor Tigel today, it will not successful. So I would like to thank you for your contributions, and I do hope for you to come back again in the future, maybe the different topic. So please feel free to contact me for students if you have any other interest topics. And Professor Tigel, I would like to thank you for your contribution today.
Yeah, thank you all of you. Thank you all of you listen to me, but also the questions, some of the questions, it's very hard for me to digest, but we will look forward. Wish you all the best. Thank you. So I'll go off now, yeah?
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And
Thank you, teacher.
I will also send you some message about the IBSC financial departments. They ask for some information from you. I will send
Okay.
Okay. And
Wonderful.
see you
Wonderful.
again.
And we will get a copy of the video recording, yeah?
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
I
please.
send you. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Wish you all the best. Thank you, and hope that the monks in Myanmar will do something positive for peace. Thank you.
Okay, hold on a moment. Can you just take out the presentations so that I can have a group photo together?
I can go out, yeah?
No, just the stop.
Just stop of your screen, sir. Stop of your screen.
Share
The
screen.
top of your presentation screen.
Oh, I see. Stop sharing. That's what you mean.
Yeah,
right?
stop sharing. Right. Stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah, stop sharing, Professor.
Oh, so to take a photo of me.
Okay, so anyone can use smile and send the loving kindness to all sentient beings. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Can I do it again? 1, 2, 3. Again, can you? Some of you may open the camera. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's all.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
have a
Thank
nice
you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
So wish you all the best.
Yeah.
I'm
you.
leaving
Buddha
now.
bless
It's okay.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you all again. All good luck. See you again.
Good luck.